It was a regular Friday night in April 2010 when two students from Bright College left their dorm for an evening with friends and never came back. For years, there were no answers, no signs, no final goodbyes, just a silence that grew heavier with each passing month. Two bright, hopeful lives had simply disappeared. Then, 6 years later, something unexpected happened. Someone zooming through Google Street View spotted a strange image. At first, it seemed like nothing, just a man standing by the trunk of a car. But something about it didn't sit right. What followed would change everything. At 7:43 a.m., Mark Thompson was jolted awake by the sound of his phone. The number was unfamiliar. "Mr. Thompson, this is Detective Rodriguez from Aurora County. We need you to come in. There's been a development in your daughter's case." Mark's heart pounded. For 6 years, he'd lived in a state of quiet agony, flinching at every phone call, scanning every crowd, hoping, dreading. "Is it Sarah?" he asked, barely able to get the words out. "We'd prefer to talk in person, sir, but I need to prepare you. The remains we discovered were identified as May Chin, your daughter's roommate." Mark's knees buckled. It wasn't Sarah, but the wave of relief was immediately drowned by guilt. May was someone's daughter, too. The clue that broke the silence came from an everyday citizen who noticed something odd in a Street View image from 2010. A man bent over a car trunk, something white and bulky, barely visible inside. The image led investigators to a section of the sewer system, where they found May's remains, carefully wrapped and preserved. "We're enhancing the photo," Rodriguez explained. "The posture suggests he was lifting something heavy. The timing of the image lines up with the timeline. We're reopening everything." Mark was already pulling on yesterday's clothes, racing to the station. The only thing louder than his footfalls was the memory of April 9th, 2010. The last text Sarah sent him read, "Out with May, don't wait up, love you." That message, once casual, now echoed like a goodbye. Inside the police station, Mark was met by Detective Rodriguez, calm, direct, with tired eyes that had clearly seen too much. She led him into a conference room where evidence bags sat on the table. Among them, a student ID, still faintly showing May's smile. "We found this with her," the detective said gently. Mark remembered their dorm room. Everything had been untouched. Sarah's economics book left open on chapter 12. May's coffee still on the nightstand, lipstick mark and all. They hadn't planned to leave. Then Rodriguez showed him the printed image. It was grainy, the man barely visible, just a side profile, back turned, but the white plastic in the trunk stood out. The timestamp, June 15th, 2010, 2 months after the girls vanished. "If he was moving May then," Mark started. "It suggests Sarah could still be out there," Rodriguez finished. Before they could say more, a quiet knock. An officer stepped in. "Detective, the Chens have arrived." Mark looked through the glass. May's mother clutched her husband's arm like the ground might fall away. Her father just stared ahead, broken. Mark stood. He knew what it meant to hold out hope for 6 long years. "Take your time," Rodriguez said softly. Mark stepped into the waiting area, his legs barely holding him. When Mrs. Chen saw him, she let out a heart-wrenching sound, somewhere between a sob and a wail, before collapsing into his arms. Her whole body trembled as she whispered, "My baby girl," in broken English. Mr. Chen joined them, and for a long moment, the 3 parents stood together, strangers bound by one shared, unbearable truth. Mark held them tightly, even as guilt clawed at his insides. He was thankful it wasn't Sarah, shamefully, selfishly thankful. But May was their child, their everything. "I'm so sorry," Mark said, barely able to speak. "I'm so sorry." Rodriguez gave them space. Then, gently but firmly, she stepped in. "We're going to find who did this," she promised the Chens. Then she turned to Mark. "And we're not giving up on Sarah. That photo, it changes everything. Someone made a mistake, and now we follow it." Mark nodded, but as he looked into the devastated faces of May's parents, he wondered, even if they found the truth, would it ever feel like justice? Mark couldn't bring himself to go home. Not yet. Something in him needed to go back to the beginning. He drove toward the university. The campus looked exactly the same and completely different. Sarah's old dorm still stood, exit hall, like a monument frozen in time. Mark walked in through the main doors. The familiar mix of floor cleaner and microwave popcorn hit him like a memory he hadn't asked for. The bulletin boards were still there, but the events had changed. Pride Week flyers, climate group meetings. But the floor was the same, worn down in the center by thousands of student shoes. A group of girls ran past him, laughing about someone's Instagram post. They reminded him so much of Sarah and May, carefree, alive. He climbed to the third floor, room 312. He stood in front of it, listening. Inside, unfamiliar voices, music, casual chatter about exams. The girls in there had no idea what had once happened in that room, that 2 lives had ended, quietly, without warning, leaving behind coffee mugs and open textbooks. Leaving the dorm, Mark made one more stop. He drove to where Chrome nightclub used to be. The once popular student hangout was gone now, its neon glow replaced by a faded for lease banner. The windows were covered in old brown paper, curling at the edges from years of rain and sun. He circled the building, snapping photos. Around him, the city had changed too. The old copy center was now a phone repair shop. The sub shop had become a vegan cafe, but Crossroads Bar was still there. Same green awning, same brick face. Some places, time couldn't erase. Others had vanished. Murphy's Pub, where students once gathered, was boarded up. The Velvet Room had turned into a yoga studio. Mark took photos of every storefront. He remembered how the police had checked all these places in 2010. Detective Morrison, Rodriguez's predecessor, had personally interviewed employees and collected footage. Crossroads had been questioned too. The owner had insisted no one saw the girls. Then Mark's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Local news is setting up at Aurora Alley. Thought you should know. A friend. His chest tightened. He drove straight there. 3 news vans were already parked along the street. Cameras were being set up. Reporters were preparing to go live near the sewer grate, the one that had held May's body all these years. Her photo would be everywhere by tonight. Maybe someone, somewhere, would finally remember something they hadn't said before. Back home, Mark opened his laptop and logged into Facebook. The Find Sarah and May page, the one he'd made just 2 weeks after they vanished, had 47 new notifications. He clicked through, hands shaking. The news had spread. May's name was back in the spotlight. Over 200 new comments had appeared. Just heard about May, praying Sarah is found safe. This is heartbreaking. I remember them from psych class. Whoever's responsible needs to be caught. Classmates were sharing photos and stories. Someone had posted a picture Mark had never seen. Sarah and May at a dorm party, laughing, holding red cups, so full of life it almost hurt to look at. Then Mark saw a private message notification from someone named Pete Garrison. The name didn't ring a bell. He clicked. Mr. Thompson, I just saw the news about May. I'm deeply sorry. I own Crossroads Bar on University Avenue. I know the police questioned us in 2010, but something came up recently. One of our former bartenders remembered serving 2 girls that matched Sarah and May's description that night. He didn't think much of it back then, but after today's report, I felt I had to reach out. Mark stared at the screen. For 6 years, there had been only silence. Now it felt like the cracks were finally starting to show. Would you be willing to meet in person? The message read. I'd rather explain it face to face before involving authorities. I want to be sure it's valid. I'm at the bar now if you're available. Mark stared at the screen. After 6 years of silence, a potential witness suddenly appeared, out of nowhere. His hands hovered over the keyboard. Finally, he replied, I can be there within the hour, Pete answered almost instantly. Thank you. I just wish this had come out earlier. The bartender mentioned it during a call last week. We were reminiscing, and that night came up. I'll tell you everything when you get here." Mark leaned back in his chair, uneasy. The bar had been investigated thoroughly in 2010. Employees were interviewed, security footage reviewed. The owner at the time had confidently told police that no one saw Sarah or May. Why was this only being mentioned now? Why come to him instead of going directly to investigators? Still, after years of nothing, any lead was better than silence. Crossroads Bar hadn't changed much. It still sat at the corner of University Avenue like it always had. Green awning faded, but hanging on. Mark pushed open the heavy wooden door. The place was dim, quiet. A single man stood behind the bar, cleaning a glass. He looked up. "Mr. Thompson, I'm Pete. Thanks for coming so fast." Pete looked to be in his 50s, stocky, thinning hair, a smile that felt practiced. Mark approached, noting the familiar dive bar details, worn bar stools, old team banners on the walls, and the unmistakable mix of beer and fryer oil in the air. "Can I get you something? Coffee? Beer?" Pete asked, already reaching for a pint glass. "Just water," Mark replied. "I want to hear about the bartender." Pete poured a beer anyway, sliding it over. "You look like you could use it. I mean, what a day. As a dad, I can't even imagine." He paused, leaning closer. "They said on the news it was May. Were you there? What kind of evidence did they find?" Mark blinked at the beer, took a reflexive sip, but frowned. "Police didn't share much." Right, Pete nodded. "But they must have found something? DNA? I saw they mentioned something about Google Street View. Did they show it to you?" Mark set the glass down, harder than he meant to. "Why are you asking about evidence?" Pete held up his hands. "Sorry, just trying to understand the situation. The news said Aurora Alley, but that's a long stretch. Do you know the exact spot? Or what condition? I mean, after 6 years." Mark cut him off. "Let's stay on topic. The bartender, the one who supposedly remembers seeing the girls." "Of course," Pete said quickly, wiping down a clean section of the bar. "His name was Tommy Chen. No relation to May. He worked here for a few years. Good worker, smart. We were catching up the other day, and the topic came up." "Where is he now?" Mark asked. "I'd like to talk to him myself." Pete hesitated. "He moved, I think, Colorado, or maybe Arizona, Phoenix, Tucson." Mark narrowed his eyes. "You just spoke to him last week, but don't know which state he's in?" "It was a short call. Look, I've got his old employment file somewhere. Let me check the office." Pete gestured vaguely to a door behind the bar. "Make yourself comfortable, I'll just be a minute." As Pete disappeared into the back, Mark got up and looked around. The bar was typical. Tables, booths, a hallway leading to the restrooms. But something near the back caught his eye. A heavy steel door marked "Storage, Employees Only." Unlike the others, this one had a keypad lock. The red light blinked faintly. It didn't match the rest of the building. Newer, reinforced. Why would a small bar need a lock like that on a storage room? He shook his head. Maybe he was reading too much into it. The stress, the news, everything. It was easy to start seeing threats in ordinary things. "Found something?" Pete's voice snapped Mark out of his thoughts. The bar owner reappeared, holding a piece of notebook paper. "Tommy always took notes," he said. "Very detail-oriented." Mark took the page. His heart skipped. Written in neat handwriting. April 9th, 2010. 2 Asian girls, early 20s. One wearing pink top, white skirt, ordered vodka cranberry. Other in jeans, blue sweater, rum, and Coke. Said they came from Chrome, left around 1:30 a.m. Mark looked up slowly. "That's a lot of detail for something just recently remembered." "Like I said, Tommy had a sharp memory," Pete replied, eyes flicking toward the corner of the room. Mark followed his gaze. A security camera, angled at the front entrance, blinked silently. "And these specifics, their outfits, drinks, time, you're telling me he recalled all of this casually 6 years later?" Pete shifted behind the bar, suddenly uncomfortable. "Some people just have photographic memories," Pete said casually. but maybe we should hold off on telling the police just until we verify everything. Mark narrowed his eyes. Pete was no longer just sharing memories. He was trying to stall. I might have old staff schedules, maybe even backup footage from before we upgraded the system, Pete added. If you give me until tomorrow, I can dig everything up. We want to be sure, right? Mark studied his face. Despite the bar's cool air, beads of sweat had formed on Pete's forehead. Something was off, and Mark felt it in his gut. I appreciate the effort, he said carefully, pocketing the note. I'll think about it. Pete forced a tight smile. Of course, take your time. I just want to help, father to father. You mentioned that, Mark said coldly, already walking to the door. I'll be in touch. As he stepped out into the parking lot, he could feel Pete's gaze on his back, like a weight. Mark didn't drive far, just half a block. His hands shook as he pulled out his phone and found Detective Rodriguez's number. Detective, it's Mark Thompson. I just met with Pete Garrison. Something's not right. Slow down, Mr. Thompson. What happened? Mark kept his eyes on the bar's entrance in the rearview mirror as he spoke. He messaged me on Facebook, said a bartender remembered seeing Sarah and May that night, but all he wanted to talk about was evidence, DNA, where the body was found, how well preserved it was. He wouldn't stop pressing for details. Go on. He gave me a note, handwritten, with exact descriptions, what the girls wore, what they drank, what time they left. It was too specific. No way someone remembered that from a phone call 6 years later, and when I said I might take it to you, he panicked. Told me to wait, said we needed to verify, wanted me to come back tomorrow. Where are you now? Parked just down the street. I didn't want to leave yet. There's more. His bar has this reinforced door in the back, keypad lock, heavy steel. Claims it's storage, but it's way too secure for a place that sells beer. Mark stopped mid-sentence. Pete had just stepped out the front of the bar. Even from a distance, Mark could see he was rattled. Pete glanced up and down the block, then quickly disappeared into the alley beside the building. He just left the bar, Mark whispered. He's heading into the alley. Mr. Thompson, do not follow him. Stay where you are. We'll handle it. I'm just going to drive by. I won't stop. Mark ended the call before she could say more. He started the car and rolled slowly past the alley entrance. Pete was at a back door, fumbling with keys, glancing around nervously. Something metallic clanged. Then Mark saw what he was dragging out: a jug of bleach, a box of heavy-duty trash bags, and what looked like a commercial carpet cleaner, the kind used by professional cleanup crews. Pete's shirt was soaked with sweat. He paused every few seconds to look behind him, like he was afraid someone would catch him in the act. Mark clenched the steering wheel. Every instinct screamed to stop, to confront him. But Rodriguez was right. This needed to go through the proper channels. He'd seen enough. The drive home took 15 minutes. It felt like a lifetime. Mark's mind spun with questions. Pete's obsession with the condition of the body, his desperate need to delay the police, and now, industrial cleaning supplies pulled out in the middle of the night. It all pointed in one direction. Someone was trying to erase the past. But Mark's night wasn't over yet. As he pulled into his driveway, something immediately felt wrong. The front door, usually shut and locked, was ajar, just a few inches, and he knew he had locked it that morning. Heart pounding, Mark approached slowly. The door creaked open under his touch. Inside, muddy footprints stained the carpet. They led from the entryway toward the hallway, toward the bedrooms. "Hello," he called out. Silence. He followed the trail. The footprints went straight to Sarah's room. The door stood open. Everything looked untouched, almost. Except one thing. The missing person flyer, the one that had hung on the wall for 6 years, was gone. Torn bits of paper still clung to the wall, the corners of tape fluttering slightly in the air. Someone had been in his house. Someone had come for Sarah's memory. Mark's legs nearly gave out. Someone had been inside his home. Someone had gone straight to Sarah's room and taken her missing person flyer. His phone buzzed. A message from Detective Rodriguez. "Patrol car en route to Crossroads. Where are you?" With trembling fingers, Mark typed, "Home, Someone broke in. They took Sarah's poster. His phone rang immediately. Rodriguez's voice was sharp, urgent. Get out of the house. Now lock yourself in your car. Backup is on the way. Mark backed out of the hallway, every shadow in his home suddenly feeling like a threat. The air was thick with dread. This wasn't random. He was sure of it now. Pete Garrison was at the center of it all. Sitting in his car outside the house, Mark's phone buzzed again, but this time from an unknown number. He hesitated, then opened the message and froze. A photo, Sarah's student ID card, her smiling face, young, alive, frozen in time. But what chilled him wasn't the card itself. It was the black-gloved hand holding it against a gray concrete wall. A message accompanied the photo. Come to Crossroads Bar basement, 20 minutes, no police, or she disappears forever. Mark's heart slammed in his chest. 6 years. 6 years of waiting, of hoping. And now, a glimpse. A sign that Sarah might be alive. He zoomed in. The card was real, worn. The wall behind it was nondescript. But Mark recognized the hand. He knew. Pete. Pete had always known. His phone rang again. Detective Rodriguez. Mark stared at her name, thumb hovering over answer. If he told her, she'd shut it down. Police would flood the bar. But what if Pete was watching? What if one wrong move erased Sarah forever? He ended the call. He began typing a message to Rodriguez. Pete Garrison has Sarah, but stopped. What if Pete could read his phone somehow? What if that message was a risk he couldn't take? He deleted it. He had no choice. Mark drove toward Crossroads in silence. Every second, his mind fought between fear and hope. The fact that Pete had given a specific deadline, 20 minutes, meant he was watching. Maybe even nearby. He parked behind the building, just as instructed. The sun had already dipped below the rooftops. The alley was bathed in weak yellow light from a flickering bulb. There, half hidden in shadow, was a basement door Mark hadn't noticed before. Slightly open, a voice echoed up from the dark. Down here. Pete. Mark descended the stairs, each step colder than the last. At the bottom stood Pete, and this was no longer the friendly bar owner. This man's face was flushed, eyes wild, and in his hand, a gun. You just couldn't leave it alone, Pete said through clenched teeth. 6 quiet years, and then that damn Google car, and now you. Where is she? Mark's voice cracked. Pete raised the gun. Move. He directed Mark through a hallway that stretched far beyond what should have existed beneath a bar. They passed a loud freezer unit, doors that led to rooms unseen, the air thick with cold and damp. Detective Rodriguez already called me, Pete muttered. Asked about records. You ruined everything. They stopped at a steel door with several locks. Pete fumbled with the keys, but never lowered the gun. Is she in there? Mark asked. Pete didn't answer. He just opened the door. Inside was a small concrete room, a narrow bed, a bucket in the corner, clothes folded on a makeshift shelf, and on the far wall, scratches. Hundreds of them, grouped in sevens, like someone had been marking time. Days, weeks, years. Mark stumbled forward. Sarah. The room was empty. Pete shoved him inside. She was here, for a long time, but now you made it messy. Mark turned to face him. Where is she? What did you do? Pete's smile was cold, hollow. Same thing I'm going to do to you. You're going to vanish, just like her. No cameras this time, no lucky footage, no more chances. Pete raised the weapon. Mark's eyes went back to the wall. The endless tally marks blurred together as he tried to count them. Every mark, a day Sarah had survived in this concrete cage. Please, Mark whispered, just tell me if she's still alive. Pete's finger moved toward the trigger. A sudden knock echoed from above. 3 sharp raps, firm, measured, enough to make Pete freeze in place. Mark followed Pete's gaze to a bank of monitors in the corner. How had he missed that before? Surveillance cameras, 4 screens flickering with silent feeds, the bar's front door, the main room, the alley, even the street. On one screen, 2 uniformed officers stood just outside the entrance. Their body cameras blinked. A patrol car was parked in full view. Pete had been watching everything. his face twisted with fury. He turned on Mark, grabbing him by the collar, pressing the gun to his head. One sound, and she's gone, you hear me? Sarah dies. Mark barely managed a nod. His heart pounded, not just with fear, but with hope. Pete had said it. She dies. Sarah was alive. Upstairs, Pete called out in a voice eerily calm. "Be right there!" He shoved Mark back into the room. "Sit, stay quiet. You make a sound and I end it. Fast." Pete thundered up the stairs. Mark pressed his ear to the cold ceiling, trying to catch any scrap of conversation. "Officers, sorry. We're closed. I was just doing inventory downstairs. Mr. Garrison, we're looking for Mark Thompson. His vehicle was seen nearby." "Thompson? Haven't seen him since earlier. Left around 4, seemed upset. Something about that missing girl. May, right?" Mark scanned the room. He couldn't stay silent. A shelving unit stood against the wall. He crawled toward it and shoved with all his strength. It toppled with a heavy crash, but the concrete swallowed the noise. Panicking, he grabbed a metal box and began slamming it against the wall, the floor, screaming, "I'm down here, help!" His voice shredded. Nothing. No reply, no footsteps. Upstairs, Pete continued without missing a beat. "You're welcome to take a look, but like I said, he's not here." I was a little worried, honestly. He didn't seem well. Mentioned something about employee records. Real shame about that girl they found. Mark beat his fists against the door until they bled. His cries echoed in the silence, but no one came. Then, the sound he feared most. The front door closing. Footsteps returned. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Pete's face appeared in the doorway. Pale, tense, but furious. "Your cop friends just signed your death warrant." He grabbed Mark and dragged him from the room. "Come on, let me show you how deep this goes before you disappear." The basement wasn't a storage space. It was something else entirely. Mark's stomach churned as they passed through dim corridors. A stained mattress in one room. Chains bolted to the wall. Scrape marks on the floor. Tripods. Cameras. Lights. A live monitor showing a cold, empty room from multiple angles. It wasn't a bar, it was a hidden complex. Pete's voice was high, unhinged. 6 years of precision. You think I just held a grudge? I built this. Quiet. Clean. You ruined it all with your questions. They stopped at a familiar industrial freezer. Pete threw open the door, empty inside, but the sharp sting of bleach filled the air. "This is where I kept her friend. 2 years. Had to move her when construction started next door. Couldn't risk it. And then, boom. Street view car at the wrong place, wrong time. 6 years of work destroyed by some idiot in a mapping van." "Sarah," Mark whispered, tears in his eyes. "Please, just tell me she's alive." "Oh, you'll find out. But first, you get the same treatment." Pete raised the gun again. "No one's finding you. I don't make the same mistake twice." Suddenly, chaos. Shouts from upstairs, boots pounding on metal. The monitors lit up with flashing lights. Police swarmed the alley. Multiple officers in tactical gear closed in on every entrance. On one screen, Detective Rodriguez spoke into her radio. Calm, focused. Pete spun in panic, staring at the monitors. Number, no. Mark's car was surrounded. His phone had been found inside. Rodriguez had known something was wrong the second he stopped responding. Patrol returned. The building was now surrounded. "Police! Pete Garrison! We know you're inside! Step away from Mark Thompson and put your weapon down!" Pete stood frozen, his grip tightening on the gun. This was it. Pete yanked Mark toward him, twisting his body into a human shield. The cold barrel of the gun pressed against Mark's head just as officers stormed the basement, flashlights slicing through the darkness. "Back off!" Pete screamed. "I'll do it!" Detective Rodriguez led the entry team, weapon raised, voice steady but taut. "It's over, Pete. There's no way out. The building's sealed from every angle." Pete's hand trembled slightly. "Then he goes with me." Rodriguez took a careful step forward. "Think this through. You fire that gun, we fire back. That's how it ends. Is that really what you want?" Mark could feel Pete's sweat soaking through his shirt. The tension in the air was suffocating. "You don't get it," Pete muttered. "You don't understand what I built here. Then help us understand, Rodriguez said calmly. But you have to put the gun down first. Talk to us. You're still alive. That means there's still a choice. You want your side of the story told? You can't tell it if you're dead. Pete faltered. His grip loosened just enough. A deal? You're saying I could still make a deal? That depends on what you give us, Rodriguez replied. But only the living get to negotiate. He ruined everything, Pete hissed. 6 years of control, all gone because of him. We'll talk about that, but first, the gun. A long, breathless pause followed. The humming of the freezer, the low creak of boots shifting weight. Officers waited, every laser dot trained, every breath held. Pete's arm dropped just slightly, and that was enough. A taser fired. Pete's body jerked violently, the gun slipping from his grasp. He collapsed to the floor with a heavy thud as officers closed in. You fools, he snarled through clenched teeth. You don't know what you've done. She'll die without me. She needs her medicine. She needs him. Rodriguez moved to Mark, helping him to his feet. Are you hurt? Sarah, Mark gasped. He has Sarah. She's here. Rodriguez turned to her team. Search every room, every corridor. We're looking for Sarah Thompson. White female, mid-20s. Officers swept the basement like a flood. Mark followed, adrenaline dulling his pain. Locked door, someone shouted down one corridor. Heavy duty. Triple deadbolts. Reinforced. They converged on it. The door was solid steel. Deep gouges marked the inside, as if someone had tried to claw their way out. Get the ram, Rodriguez ordered. It took 4 brutal strikes. On the 4th, the door cracked open. The air inside hit them like a wall. A mix of human suffering, isolation, and something worse, hopelessness. And in the corner, on a stained mattress, lay a figure. Mark froze. His knees nearly gave way. The woman was painfully thin, hair tangled and unwashed, eyes vacant, wild. She recoiled at the movement. No, I'll be good, she whispered. Please don't hurt me. Rodriguez raised her hand. Everyone back. Give her space. Mark, slowly. Mark stepped forward, voice shaking. Sarah? Sweetheart, it's Dad. It's me. She didn't seem to hear him. Sonny, he said, using her childhood nickname. Sonny, it's Daddy. I'm here. I found you. Her head tilted slightly. Her eyes blinked in confusion. Daddy? She seemed to be remembering how to speak. He said, you stopped looking. He said, the world moved on. He lied, Mark said, tears running down his cheeks. I never stopped. Not for a single day. Her body began to shake. The sobs that escaped her were raw and broken, like sound from someone who forgot how to cry. Mark fell to his knees and held her. She weighed almost nothing. Her bones pressed through her gown like paper under skin. Is this real? She kept whispering. Am I dreaming again? I used to dream about the sun. It's real, he said. You're safe, baby. Paramedics rushed in, careful but fast. 4 bags, vital signs, a soft blanket, but Sarah flinched at every touch. I'm sorry, she said again and again. I'll be good. Please don't tell him. I'll be quiet. Rodriguez stepped in. Her voice was gentle but firm. He can't hurt you anymore, Sarah. Pete Garrison is in custody. He's in custody. He can't hurt you anymore, Mark whispered, gripping Sarah's trembling hand as paramedics prepared to lift her onto the gurney. But Sarah, through dry lips and shaking breath, whispered something that froze him in place. There were others before me. He showed me videos, said I'd end up like them if I wasn't good. Rodriguez, standing nearby, heard every word. Her face hardened. Without hesitation, she stepped away to radio new orders. Search the basement again. Every wall, every inch. Look for hidden spaces. This goes deeper. As they carried Sarah up the stairs, sunlight spilled through the dusty windows of the bar. She shielded her eyes, tears welling instantly. The sun, she whispered. He said it was gone, said there was war, said we were the only ones left. He lied, Mark said, walking beside the gurney. All of it. Lies. You're safe now. Outside, the alley buzzed with chaos. Emergency lights flashed. Reporters had already gathered behind police tape. Sarah's gaze froze. In the back of a patrol car sat Pete Garrison. She went rigid. Number, please. I was good. I didn't tell them anything. Mark stepped between her and the window, gently guiding her focus. Look at me, Sonny, just me. He can't touch you now. The ambulance doors closed. As they pulled away, Mark stole a final glance at Pete. The man who stole 6 years from his daughter looked small, defeated, twisted in rage as his delusions collapsed around him. Sarah's journey home had begun, a journey that started with the sun and the realization that it still existed. At the hospital, fluorescent lights hummed softly as Mark sat beside his daughter's bed. Nurses moved in and out, checking monitors and IVs. Sarah slept, lightly sedated for her examination, but even in her sleep, she flinched at every sound. Her frail form was barely more than a shadow under the blankets. Detective Rodriguez appeared at the doorway. Her expression was grim. "Mark, can we talk?" He followed her into a small consultation room. She shut the door and sat across from him, unfolding a manila file. "He talked," she said. "Pete confessed. Took hours, but he finally broke. Said he'd consider a lighter sentence if he gave us everything." Mark's voice was barely audible. "What did he say?" Rodriguez didn't sugarcoat it. He admitted to a pattern. He targeted women, mostly intoxicated college girls. It went back years. That night, April 9th, 2010. Sarah had left Chrome nightclub alone. She was disoriented. Pete approached her outside, told her that May was sick and needed help in the parking lot. Mark swallowed hard. She would have believed him. She'd never leave a friend behind. And she didn't, Rodriguez said, because May was nearby, looking for her. May saw what was happening, tried to intervene. She told Pete to back off, tried to pull Sarah away. Rodriguez paused. Her jaw tightened. That's when he pulled a weapon, forced them both into his van. May fought, tried to protect Sarah. In the struggle, he shot her. So it wasn't an accident, Mark said, his voice flat. He murdered her. Rodriguez nodded. He stored May's body in the bar's freezer, kept serving customers, living his life, with her body 10 feet away. 2 years later, when nearby construction threatened to expose the area, he moved her, dumped her, thought he was careful. But the Google Street View car caught him in that one moment. Mark stared blankly at the wall. "And Sarah?" Rodriguez's voice dropped. "It gets worse." She took a breath, then continued. Pete didn't just keep her prisoner. He built a recording setup, full lighting, sound, cameras. He filmed what he did, repeatedly, and he distributed it. For years, Mark lurched forward, catching himself on the table. A nurse quickly stepped in with a waste bin. He didn't vomit. There was nothing left, but the sound he made wasn't human. Rodriguez gave him space, waited, then spoke again, gently. "There's more." Pete admitted it, Rodriguez said quietly. This wasn't the first time. They had uncovered evidence of at least 3 other women, all victims before 2010. Women who were never reported missing, likely unhoused, likely ignored. He had preyed on those he believed no one would search for. "How many more?" Mark asked, hollow. "We're still searching," Rodriguez said grimly. Sarah was moved between locations, different properties. All had hidden rooms, built specifically for control. The basement we found her in, just one of many. He'd kept her drugged, sedated, a cocktail of substances designed to blur reality, keep her obedient. Mark pictured her sunken face, the way she asked for permission to speak. "So why reach out to me?" "Because he panicked," Rodriguez replied. "When May's body was discovered and media coverage began, he knew it would eventually lead back to him. Contacting you, pretending to help, was his attempt to control the investigation, like he had done before. He was confident in manipulation. He thought it would work again." A soft knock interrupted them. Dr. Patel entered, a tablet in her hand. "Mr. Thompson, we've completed Sarah's initial evaluation." Mark braced himself. "How bad?" "Physically, she's malnourished. Significant vitamin deficiencies. Blood work shows prolonged exposure to sedatives, benzodiazepines, antipsychotics, other tranquilizers, but her body can recover with proper care. She paused. Emotionally, it's more complicated. Years of trauma, conditioning, manipulation. She asks permission for everything, even to speak. She apologizes when someone enters the room. Mark's eyes burned. Does she remember anything from before? Fragments, Dr. Patel said. He told her over and over that you'd abandoned her, that the world had ended, that there was nothing left outside. For her, reality has been a controlled lie for 6 years. But when I called her Sonny, she knew me, and that's significant, the doctor said. Emotionally charged memories, especially tied to safety or love, often survive the worst trauma. Her healing will take time, years maybe, but it is possible. They returned to Sarah's room. She was waking, her eyes flickering open under the sedation. Mark stepped forward. "It's okay, Sonny," he whispered. "You're in a hospital. You're safe." Sarah looked around slowly. The window, the clean linens, the lights. Her voice cracked, barely audible. "This is real?" "Yes," Mark said gently. "You're free." Detective Rodriguez stepped forward. "Sarah, I'm Detective Rodriguez. Pete Garrison is in custody. He can't hurt you ever again. He's going away. For life." Sarah's eyes darted between them. Then slowly, she reached for her father's hand. "Did you," she struggled, "did you look for me?" "Every single day," Mark said, his voice breaking. "I never stopped. Not for 1 second." Tears welled up in her eyes. "He said you gave up, said nobody wanted me." "He lied," Mark whispered, "about everything." Rodriguez's phone buzzed. She stepped away, then returned a moment later. "We've contacted the Chens. They know their daughter's killer has been caught. And they wanted you to know they're grateful Sarah survived." "What happens now?" "We keep going. Pete wasn't acting alone. He was connected to an entire network. Digital distribution, concealed properties. There may be other victims, families that never got answers. We're going to find them." Mark looked at his daughter. She was 26 years old. But what she'd endured had aged her in ways no one should bear. 6 years stolen, 6 years of silence. Sarah squeezed his hand, her voice just above a whisper. "Dad, will I get better?" Dr. Patel stepped forward. "Yes, it'll be hard. It'll take time. But you survived something unimaginable, and with care, you can heal." Mark nodded. "We'll do it together, as long as it takes. You're not alone anymore." Sarah managed the faintest smile, small, weak, but real. In that sterile hospital room, with machines humming softly and trauma still fresh in the air, that one fragile smile meant everything. She was alive. She was free. And for the first time in 6 years, the world outside her window wasn't a lie. It was sunlight. It was real. And she was going home,